It is no secret that Rocket League is an extremely hard game. If you want to get to the top, there will be many important concepts that a player would have to understand and eventually master. But out of every concept in the game, there is one that is far more important than the rest. If you were to take a guess, you might think it's a simple concept like rotation, or a concept like offense or defense. These are all good answers, but you need to think about why your rotation, offense, or defense even work in the first place. Every attack, every save, and everything else you are involved in has a starting point. That starting point is the position you have right before getting involved. Every concept requires a good enough position to make it shine. For right now, your goal is to learn everything you need to know about the most important concept in Rocket League. This is how to achieve perfect positioning. Positioning is the most important concept in Rocket League. Depending on how good your positioning is for a situation, the difficulty you'll have in dealing with it will change. Every attack starts with a good position, and every save requires you to be in the right place at the right time. The goal with your positioning is to be in a place where you're able to play for as many possibilities as you can. You're trying to constantly be in the position to always get to where you need to be at the right time, no matter what happens. If your position allows you to do this, you've achieved the perfect position. Now that we know what you're trying to accomplish, it is now time to know the basics. When you are first learning how to achieve the perfect position, the distance you have for each play will be extremely important. You need to be close enough to challenge whenever you need to, and far enough away to go back if there's a problem. The opponents will have many options available to them at the start of every situation. When players have options available to them, it will be extremely important to deal with the situation properly. If you were to dive in without a second thought, the opponent can just use their options to counter you if they're ready to use them. Having a good distance will give you the flexibility to play for every possible outcome. After you find the correct position, you'll need to play for whatever possibility happens. When the possibility becomes certain, you'll be in the perfect position to make your decision on what you should do. You can either challenge, wait, or go back. Your position will be important for every part of your gameplay, regardless of playstyle. It's not just about being passive or aggressive. It's about being in the right place at the right time, and using your position to make the best decision you can. Your initial distance will allow you to play for all possibilities, but the perfect position for when you approach a situation won't always be the perfect position for the entire play. There are a few things that you need to pay attention to when you are positioning for something. For every situation that you're in, the opponent will have different options available to them at the start of it. The things they are able to do in their situation will change how far away you should be. For example, if they're able to shoot the ball directly into your net from their position, you should be far enough to save the shot while also being close enough to reposition if they take a different approach. That is what your position should be able to do for you at the start of a situation. The longer a play goes on, the more their options will change. When their options change, you will need to reposition yourself to account for the new things the opponent is able to do. If you fail to correct your position in time, you won't be able to play for the new things they can do. You need to always be ready to make the necessary adjustments. Here's what you should know right now. For every situation, you need to use your position to watch the opponent. You are far enough away to play for the immediate danger, but close enough to either challenge, wait, or go back. When the outcome is certain, you will then act depending on what you believe will lead to the best outcome. Your position should always allow you to play for everything no matter what happens, and always let you have a choice in every situation. Now that we have the basics of positioning out of the way, we can talk about the more advanced parts of it. The perfect position doesn't always require you to be stationary. Depending on the situation, being able to have the correct amount of momentum could instantly change how much you're able to do. Momentum is an extremely powerful tool that allows you to utilize your position to its maximum potential. If you can use momentum properly, it will allow you to commit to an action with higher efficiency. There are many benefits you get from having momentum behind your position, but there is a major downside that you need to carefully manage if you don't want to make your position weaker. The downside is what momentum does to your ability to play for possibilities. Momentum increases your ability to play for things that are directly in front of you, but in return, you become less flexible. I want you to visualize a cone in front of your car. The cone in front of your car represents what you're able to play for. When you have low momentum, the cone will be very wide, but also very short. You are very flexible, but you can't play for things that are very far away from you. If you have high momentum, the cone will be very thin, but also very long. You won't have as much flexibility, but you are easily able to play for things that are far away if it's in front of you. If you have the wrong amount of momentum, it can make your situation harder than it needs to be. Managing the amount of momentum you have is important, and being able to use it at the right time will make the most out of your position. There's one more thing you need to pay attention to. It's not something extremely important, but it still needs to be said so that people don't get confused. You don't need to move if the situation doesn't require you to. Momentum is a tool that can help you if you use it correctly, but it can instantly ruin your position if you aren't careful or have bad timing. Every situation is different, and some situations will require you to have a different amount of momentum, or even no momentum at all. You should never move for the sake of it. There needs to be intention and good reasoning behind everything you do. For momentum, you just need to know what's beneficial, how much of it you need, and what you need to accomplish. Playing for all possibilities is a simple task, but the closer you get to the play, the more dangerous it becomes, and the more you'll need to pay attention to what's going on. When the distance between you and the opponent is small, subtle changes in the opponent's car will drastically change what they can and cannot do against you. When you're in a position like this, you need to be able to isolate the things they can do from the things they can't, and use every small moment to your advantage. There are two things you need to look out for when you're trying to position in this kind of situation. The first and most important thing to look for is the opponent's dodge timer. With the short distance between the both of you, a well-timed flip can be all it takes to get around you. You need to pay attention to every time they jump, and what their position allows them to do with it. In Rocket League, a dodge timer lasts for 1.5 seconds. The times when their dodge expires, gets used, or they aren't in a position to use it properly are the moments when they're at their weakest. You need to use your position to cut off anything they can do, but recognize their weak moments and punish them immediately. You need to separate the things they can do with their flip from the things they can't, and position with the intention of getting the best outcome you can. The position they have relative to the ball is also important. Their position will determine how and where they can hit the ball. If they're on the left side of the ball, they can only hit it to the right. This is mostly common sense, but in situations like this, an opponent can quickly change their position and catch you off guard. The weakness that you need to take advantage of is when they are only able to hit the ball in a specific direction. When you know where the ball is guaranteed to go, you're able to know where to position if you want to guard against anything they might do. Positioning for something in extremely close situations will require you to think, understand, and act very quickly. That is everything you need to look out for when you're trying to isolate possibilities. So far, we've only talked about optimizing your position. If you're discussing one's main, this will be almost everything you would need, but most people are playing team game modes. When you have a teammate, the position you take will change depending on if you're first man or second man. Just so everyone is on the same page, someone who is first man will be the person who's going to challenge, or someone who is directly interacting with the ball. They are typically the closest one to the play. Everything we've talked about so far is for situations when you are considered the first man. If you're a second man, you are not interacting with the ball. Your role is to be the next one to challenge, or assist your teammates when they run into problems. These players tend to sit behind the first man, and this position will be the main focus of this section. When you're positioning while taking your teammate into account, you'll play for the possible outcomes that come from the interaction between your teammate and your opponent. It might seem simple, but the things you're positioning for will change depending on who's attacking and who's defending. The role of a second man is to support their teammate, and the kind of support they'll need will change depending on the situation. There are two situations we'll go over, and in both of them, you'll be the second man. Situation 1 is when the opponent is attacking your teammate, and Situation 2 is when your teammate is attacking the opponent. In Situation 1, your opponent is making an offensive play. You and your teammate will need to get out of the situation without getting scored on. Some players might leave their teammate to fend for themselves, thinking that just because they aren't on the ball means that they don't have any responsibility in the situation. When your teammate is defending, they are playing for all possibilities. In the ideal situation, they alone will be enough to defend the attack. You are trying to be the last line of defense in the times when the ideal situation doesn't happen. While they are playing for the possible outcomes of the opponent, you are playing for the possible outcome that comes from their interaction. In Situation 2, your teammate is making an offensive play. You need to make sure that the play can remain as dangerous as possible, while also making sure it doesn't backfire horribly. Fortunately, this is almost the exact same as when you're playing for all possibilities, but instead of it being for what the opponent does, it is what your teammate does with the ball. You have to be close enough to either take over or score if the attack is good enough for the opportunity to happen. When it comes to playing more defensively during your teammate's attack, you only need to do this when your teammate's attack looks too weak or easy to challenge. When your teammate loses control over the play, they lose control over the outcome. When their play looks too weak, you have to be ready to minimize the potential damage that can happen. If you're the second man on offense during a 2v2 match and your opponent makes a mistake, you will need to determine if the play is worth continuing or if it needs to be abandoned. You are the last line of defense, and need to make sure the worst doesn't happen. In both situations, your teammate is meant to fill in the gaps that you aren't able to. In return, you need to do the same for them. If you're the second man on defense, you'll need to be the one who saves anything that slips past them. If you're the second man on offense, you'll need to be there to support your teammate and make sure the play remains dangerous. Not only that, but make sure the play doesn't lead to a bad outcome. When you're playing in matches, you won't always have the luxury of being able to play for everything or even having a teammate to help you. you might be left in awkward situations where you have no choice but to play for a small number of possibilities. This is the absolute worst situation to be in, but having an idea of what to do can help you get out of it. Some possibilities might be more likely to happen than others. As you understand the game more, you're able to know what's most likely going to happen for that specific situation. If you have seen the exact same situation hundreds of times before, you will know which option the opponents tend to take. This is called pattern recognition. When you're in a rough spot, you will have a higher chance of getting out of it because of your experience. Let's take a scenario where the opponent's situation will always have two outcomes. Outcome number 1 will happen 80% of the time. Outcome number 2 will happen 20% of the time. If you were only able to position for one outcome, it would make sense to position for the outcome that happens 80% of the time. This is the ideal scenario, but unfortunately, there are hundreds of different factors that can change how often a certain outcome will happen. There are many factors that can go into a situation. Something that will usually happen 80% of the time might change depending on the player and the situation itself. Every player is different, and they might have different habits, tendencies, and understanding that will change what they do. In lower ranks, their consistency, mechanics, and general game sense will either be flawed or just flat out different compared to another player in the same match, so the decisions that they make will change drastically from one player to another. In higher ranks, they all tend to have a similar structure and have a decent understanding of what does and does not work in a situation. Rather than their decisions changing because of a lack of understanding, it is primarily changed from their playstyle, habits, or the situation itself. The chance of a certain outcome happening isn't just a flat number across the board. It's a constantly changing number that varies from one player to another. As always, the most important thing is paying attention to the opponents and understanding them. When you understand their tendencies, you're able to pick the right option and get out of the situation. Positioning is an extremely advanced concept, and your position will change depending on what's happening. There are thousands of different factors that can change what the perfect position should be for a situation. The most important thing, no matter what it is to understand what's happening and make the best decision you can with the information you have. With the information you have right now, the best decision you can make is subscribing. I make videos that explain gameplay concepts and other issues that people might run into when trying to improve. If you think this was helpful to you, then you know exactly what to do. But anyways, thanks for watching, and don't get tilted.